Yo, what's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Chronicle. As usual, I'm your boy Adam Taylor, and as usual, I'm joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Shields. What's poppin', Tim?
Nothing much, just trying to beat the heat right now, man. It is, I don't know about for you across the pond, but right now it is sweltering out, man. It's been in the
That is
90s for like a
wet,
week.
rainy, miserable as shit. Pretty much English weather, you know? So for anyone that's new here, my name's Adam Taylor. I cover the Boston Celtics for SB Nation, USA Today, and the Celtics Chronicle newsletter. You can find the link below in the description if you're watching on YouTube or listening on any major podcast provider. Tim used to work for CLNS Media. He's also part of Celtics blog for SB Nation. Today, we're going to be looking at Boston's game against the Los Angeles Lakers in the Summer League. We saw a lot of growth there. I think the first thing I want to touch on before we jump in is no Jaden Springer. Had a big game against Miami, didn't play at all against Los Angeles. No reported injury there. To me, I feel like he just showed so much against Miami that maybe he's just shut down for the rest of Summer League. They don't need to see anymore. They already knew he was an NBA level contributor. He was playing for Philly a little bit before he came over. Maybe we see him later in the Summer League like tournament if Boston progress. But for me, I wasn't too shocked to not see him on the floor.
Yeah, and I think he'll still get developmental minutes, but I think after the first game, as you said, he performed very well against the Miami Heat. And he had a lot of support when he was in Philadelphia. It's part of the reason why the Celtics went out and got him at the deadline is because he had support from former Philly connections, including Sam Cassell, who worked with development with him. So I think he definitely deserved to. I think a night off is probably how they looked at it, but they also sort of, in a way, it clears the path for other guys to get some minutes in the summer league and try and see what else they have. Because there's a lot of guys who are trying to fight for not just roster spots, but two-way spots, G League contracts. So they're trying to give everybody who is currently signed for their summer league team the best crack at it. And if they're pretty certain on Jaden Springer, which seems to be the case, yeah, give the minutes to somebody else, give him some rest. He's going to need the minutes to develop, and I think they'll give him a little bit more run left. But yeah, especially after that first night, yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a part of their plans moving forward for the
Yeah,
roster.
for me, the hard part is figuring out where minutes are going to come from, right? Like you're behind Derek White, Drew Holiday, Peyton Pritchard. It's hard to see where you're going to slot in and get consistent minutes, and it's also completely ridiculous to kind of base what his role should be in the regular season based on one summer league game. And the
Yeah.
fact that we always fall into this summer league trap of, oh, well, he's played great. He's going to get minutes in the regular season. It's super easy to fall into. Logically speaking, I don't see him ousting Peyton Pritchard, but I do see him providing some serious competition, especially if he can grow more in terms of his after dribble shooting and his ability to create off penetration. That defense, though, that defense is excellent. But what having Springer sit did was it gave JD Davison more time on the ball. It allowed Jordan Walsh some point forward minutes. And there was a little bit more, hey, focus on these guys that have been around the team for more than a season, right? So the Jaden Davison's entering his third year with the Celtics. Neemy's entering his second year. Jordan Walsh is entering his second year. And those three were kind of like a core hub of everything that Boston did against Los Angeles. I thought JD Davison specifically has looked really good over the first two games. Seems to have a lot more control over his burst. He's varying his speeds more than before, where he'd kind of just be like, yeah, I've got a go button and a stop button, and there's nothing in between. We've seen him working on deceleration steps. Luka Doncic what's called them slow steps. His driving kick game's been good. He's got multiple different options off the dribble now where he can score from the perimeter. We saw a really nice floater in, I think it was the third quarter, maybe the fourth, where he was kind of falling back and just put up a soft touch floater. Davison's looked a lot improved. There's still areas he needs to get better. He's getting beat on slip screens a bunch when guarding up on the perimeter. I still feel like he needs to embrace contact a little bit more when getting towards the rim. Add that bump off that Peyton Pritchard added to create that separation when going for a layup or when going for a step back. But without Springer there, Davison got extra opportunity, and I think he handled it really well.
Yeah, the only thing I really would lock on to is just the turnovers, but I think that was something that he had an issue with when he was in college, if I remember correctly, from his original scouting report. But it's encouraging to at least see him take some steps forward because again, it like we were talking about with Springer, it's really, really difficult for guys to crack the rotation to begin with, especially on a team that's trying to not only contend for a championship, but defend a championship. You've got a set rotation right now, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So these guys getting minutes right now is going to be a good meter stick if these guys want to try and stick around, if they're going to get a G League contract. We still don't know what's going to happen with Davison or, talk about Drew Peterson as well. But I'm hoping that we see some more development at Davison and the Celtics give him another crack because personally, I think the athleticism is there. And it's just a matter of him kind of putting it all together. But this is what a lot of these picks are going to be. I think, giving these guys minutes to just kind of develop and put no pressure on it and just sort of let them work through it. That's what oftentimes summer league is. It's just letting guys get their legs underneath them. And for a second-year guy, this is his chance to really kind of show his improvements. It's not like he had a lot of opportunities to do that at the NBA level last season.
Yeah, and he's grown a ton in Maine. Like, he's been one of the better guards in Maine for at least 18 months. I do feel like he's in that weird position where he's probably a little bit too good for the G League, but just not quite good enough for the NBA right now. Another year in Maine, maybe some spot minutes here and there throughout the regular season. Even then, I think that's wishful thinking because Springer's there. And that's kind of that buffer then because Springer's better than JD. So he's fighting with Pritchard, and then JD is waiting for scraps. It's going to be tough, but another year in Maine should help him. I'd like to see a little bit more pick and roll creation there, maybe some offhand creation. Other than that, I think he's looked good, looked really good for what we saw last season to what we've seen this season. There's been definitive growth in multiple areas. Really enjoyed it. Another guy, Jordan Walsh, had a tough game against Miami. He was a stinker, let's be honest. Didn't really have much luck off ball in terms of defense. Didn't do much on ball. It was just a tough night. Comes into this game, I thought his defense was excellent. He had some really good defensive possessions. Positioning was good. A bit anticipation was good. Timing was good. Had some opportunities to initiate off the dribble. Okay, his shots didn't fall. His shooting was rough all night, but he came into the NBA as a defensive specialist, and he showcased that. Now, it's kind of hard to stomach the shooting struggles when last season everyone was like, man, I didn't expect this guy to be able to shoot a lick because he was just a defensive dude, and he was knocking down all the shots that he basically got force-fed. This year, it's kind of leveled out a little bit. Defense is there. Offense just isn't really there right now. He was super raw when he got drafted. He still looks quite raw. I know there was a few people hoping that maybe Walsh got some additional minutes if O'Shea Brissett doesn't return. At the moment, I'm not very comfortable there. I'd be much more comfortable with Scheierman, but we can talk about that in a moment. Maybe I'm a little bit high. Maybe I've got that summer league rose-tinted glasses with Scheierman. But Walsh has been okay. Like, it's not terrible. His wingspan, you can't teach the type of wingspan he's got. His defensive instincts are fantastic. Offense feels like he's forcing it a little bit right now. Maybe that'll settle as the summer league goes on. But overall, look, I'd give him a solid C plus. I haven't been disappointed with him, but he hasn't jumped out to me as a guy that's really figured stuff out.
Yeah, and I think this is probably about as close of a bounce back you could ask for him after the game against the Heat. And I think his athleticism is going to be something to watch for. Like, his athleticism was one of the reasons why the Celtics drafted him. He clearly could put on some poundage. I think he could definitely put some pounds on his frame right now in terms of just kind of still being like wiry and athletic. And that's just part of being a younger guy, just trying to, get your legs underneath you in the NBA. I'm hoping that the three ball gets there. That's really like the hard part, I think, for a lot of these like fringe roster guys or two-way guys. Like, how do you get minutes in a system like the Celtics, which is so heavily reliant on the 3-point shot? If you're not hitting your 3-pointers, it makes it really, really hard to get minutes. But, hopefully it's the defensive side of things where he gets that and he eventually, gets more comfortable with the offensive side of things. But again, he's a younger guy. He could just simply be overthinking it, like you said, forcing some of those shots. There was a couple that he had against the Lakers, a couple shots from deep that I thought were trying to, kind of find the ocean in a bucket or find a bucket in the ocean or whatever you'd call it in terms of terminology. I think he was just trying to find a bucket and just kind of get going, where it felt a little unnatural. He's just trying to get a shot up. But again, he's a young guy. It's important to keep in mind how young that prospect is. I don't think you could depend on him for minutes though, and that's kind of the tough part now, where you look at the rest of the roster, where you're going to get these forward minutes from, and that's where we will get to Scheierman in a bit, but that's where you have to worry about now, like where these wing rotational minutes go. Where do they go to? Like, do you give more minutes to Hauser? How does that impact the rest of the roster? Little like small tweak things. But
Yeah, I think that, Walsh's perimeter shooting would probably look a little bit better in the NBA just because the spacing that'll be around him. He'd also have better on-ball creators that can set him up a bit easier. So he's going to get better passes in more space and have that little bit more time. But are you comfortable with him being force-fed those shots if he's struggling now against the... So it's kind of a trade-off, right? You get more spacing, but at the moment you're playing against lesser quality defenders for the most part. So shouldn't that event like at least kind of level out at some point? Like it's a handoff between the two. I'm not too worried. I think that we haven't seen even the average of Jordan Walsh's offense yet. I feel like there's a level where he's going to settle on and we'll be like, actually, I do feel quite comfortable if the Celtics need to call on him. Right now, though, based on the first 2 games, there's still some development to go. Another season in the G League makes a lot more sense to me than asking him to fill in for O'Shea Brissett. But it's not like O'Shea could score. And I think that Walsh is a similar, if not better, defender already with better intangibles in terms of wingspan and his lateral movement and stuff. So maybe they do because it's not like you're losing something from O'Shea other than the energy burst that Walsh can't bring. Who knows? But when you look at it from that perspective, what he's trying to replace, the fact that there wasn't much scoring there anyway, kind of works in his favor if we're being honest with ourselves. You get what I'm saying? Like O'Shea wasn't
yeah,
really a scorer like that. That was one of the big reasons I was down on him at the beginning of last season before he won me over.
hmm yeah, and I think that's a fair point. Like in terms of you're not trying to replace, 8 or 10 points a game or something like that. You're talking about replacing a rotational wing that can give you solid defensive minutes where you're not going to hemorrhage points when he's on the floor. And again, it's a younger guy on a contract where he's cost controlled. These kind of things where it's just a matter of him getting the playing time to improve. I think that's really where like my concern even comes from is like I don't want them to invest minutes or time into a guy that they, you know, don't see as potentially being a player on this team or being an NBA player.
Talking of which, we've got Neemy, who has shown he can be an NBA player. They invested some minutes into him. Obviously, Luke Cornett was out at the time when he got his best run
Mhm.
last season. That was on that West Coast road swing. If you remember, Luke was out for a bit. Neemy had some big games out on the West Coast trip. I think it was a couple of games on the East into that West Coast swing. He looked solid last night. There was a clear game plan, though. It was like, yo, Neemy's bigger and more athletic than everybody outside of Moses Brown, who, I remember writing 4,000 words on Moses Brown for him to get traded like 6 hours after I finished writing the article. Like, that pissed me off.
I
I'll
remember
remember
that.
Moses Brown forever now because of that. But outside of Brown, I think that, Neemy looked good, man. He was bouncy. His timing was better defensively. There was one block he had, I shared it in today's newsletter, where you saw him kind of rotate over and then kind of load up for a jump, not because he needed the lift, but because that load up gave him that extra like half a second or so. So when he did jump straight up, he wasn't fouling and he managed to get the block. And that timing was an improvement from what we saw last season. He hasn't been fouling as much. His positional versatility in terms of where he positioned the screens and how willing he is to be mobile to flow into a second screen and then slip. His timing was great. His positioning's improving. I'd like to see him be more physical around the rim. I think that he's got the size and strength to be a lot more physical in terms of commanding his space. Sometimes I feel like he'll move to try and protect the ball rather than just commanding and being a bit more imposing there. If he can do that, if he can learn to hold his own on offense when he's being crowded and get his elbows out and get off me type of above the rim type thing, I think he's going to be good, man. I don't think he'll crack the rotation majorly over Luke Cornett. I think Luke's kind of cemented there. But with Porzingis out, everybody's going to take a step up in that rotation. Neemy's going to have a good opportunity here. I liked what Neemy brought to the table. I've been quite big on him. Sometimes I get a bit annoyed when everyone's like, Neemy should start. But dude, we went through this with Taco Fall, and it just look where Taco is now. I don't like it when guys get made into a gimmick because they're big and everyone's like, hey, you can't teach size. No, but you can teach everything you need to do with that size, you know? But no, overall, I was a big fan of Neemy's game. I thought Neemy played really, really well. Clear game plan coming in, and I think Neemy handled the extra touches admirably. Yeah, man, I'm down. Give Neemy more minutes in the summer league.
Yeah, and I mean it's an NBA rotational big getting minutes in summer league and doing exactly what you'd want him to do, which was dominate. And I will say this, when we're talking about like physicality and playing like with an edge, he got into it. There was some text that got thrown around during that Lakers game, during that summer league game. You saw him get physical. You saw him kind of, sort of assert himself and assert himself in certain plays and pushing through defenders, getting chippy. And I think that's, if you're looking at it from like a standpoint of development, from like the mentality that you need in order to carve out minutes at the NBA level, granted with Porzingis out, he's going to get the time. But if you actually want to have Ada like be a part of that rotation and give him minutes, him playing with that kind of intensity, that chip on his shoulder, is only going to help. He's got the athletic tools, like we've discussed, explosive athleticism. They got him running to the rim a lot of lobs. And that's something that like is going to be there, especially with the way that the Celtics have been running things. You saw it happen with Luke Cornett too, and they got it with Kada plenty of times during the regular season when he did get that run there. So it's encouraging. I'll say this. It was encouraging. I expected him to do well, and he did. And I will encourage that to continue to happen, to continue to occur. I want to see Kada get more minutes and play more and continue to do what you'd want him to do from like a rotational player standpoint. Hey, rotational guy is pretty young. He's on the Celtics, just signed a multi-year deal. I want to see him go out. If he's playing for the summer league team, I want him to absolutely cook. And he did that, defensively, rebounding wise, physicality, getting to the free throw line. Yeah, he looked like a seasoned player, and he did exactly what you'd want him to do.
Yeah, like I said, all I'd like is a little bit more dominance physically in terms of when he's ball in the paint. He's not panicking. He's just shrugging guys off, creating some separation. And explode. If you're standing by the rim, you're tall enough and athletic enough to just explode up and jam that shit. And if that's what you need to do to get guys off you, then do that. Sometimes I feel like he's a bit passive when he's being crowded. And I feel like a little drop step or a little bump off into a dunk would be more beneficial for him just developing that dominant streak. As you see some of these big guys that are just literally just dunk on dudes when they're being like guarded up on, like that, yam it down. I'd like Neemy to get that kind of streak in him, right? And I think that streak would elevate him in terms of being a genuine rotation option that could potentially dislodge where Cornet is right now, because you'd have that different dimension that you could consistently lean on when you had mismatch advantages there. So that's kind of the one development I'd like. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm an old school guy. I grew up when bigs had that mean streak in them. But yeah, that's the one thing I'd like to see from Neemy. So those are the three guys that we knew what to expect coming in. We knew where we wanted to see improvements. We've seen these guys play throughout the last season. We've seen some of them play through multiple summer leagues now. Obviously, Neemy wasn't with Boston for summer league last year. That was Azubuike, was it? I can't remember his name. There was a different big last season.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Can't remember how to pronounce his name. That's the better way of saying it. So we move on to the rookies. Guys, we didn't know what to expect. I did a deep dive scout report on Baylor Scheierman over the weekend. I've got one on Anton Watson coming later this week, most likely towards the end of the week. I think that Scheierman is such a polished project player that it's amazing. Such a polished draft pick that it's amazing. He can create off the dribble, can create for himself, can create for others, can score across all three levels, defends okay. I wouldn't say he's a great defender because he's not, and I'd be lying if I said that. Can rebound, is really good, has a good nose for rebounds on both sides of the ball. Plays with poise, doesn't seem to get sped up, doesn't seem to play past his capabilities. Some of the passes he's made have looked effortless, just no look kind of dump pass. And he got that one kind of step back. It was more like a double step back, where they step on Dalton Connect, and Connect just went, man. His ankle, we had to pray for his ankles. It was like, I hope his ankles are okay. Dude's skating right now. It's Disney on ice. That's where it was. It was at Disney on ice. I'm a big Scheierman guy. I really like him. I think that it was telling that the Celtics ran him off some of their NBA sets, the wide pin down to curl over into the catch and shoot. The, they've ran him through some zoom actions where he's turned the corner and then created that way. They've fed him around the elbow. They've allowed him to run a little bit of pick and roll. They've gave him like a vast array of opportunity to show what he can do. And they've used actions that they would use in their normal team just to kind of make that repeatable and get those early reps in. And he's done great across all of it. Again, I'd like to see him a bit more aggressive in looking for his shot and looking for his teammates. But overall, for a rookie, I think he's done really, really well. There's a reason that he came in as a fifth-year product with like the high floor, low ceiling. And again, I actually feel more confident with Scheierman coming off the bench next season than what I would with Jordan Walsh, just because he's more of a complete player right now.
Yeah, and I think the physicality and the rebounding is big with him. Like he's got a size to him. And again, like you said, not a massively good defender, but just seems like a smart player. Honestly, the biggest surprise for me was just the passing. The passing was great. Like some of the vision that he had. And that's honestly one of the biggest things for like guys coming in for the NBA, for college guys, especially for guys who have been, 2, 3, or 4 year athletes at college, being able to come in and just make the right read and make the right play, that's going to get you minutes, like on a reserve situation. And I do think it's interesting that they like started to run NBA level sets with him, because it means that, hey, these are going to be things that you're going to see if you manage to crack the rotation. And we're showing them to you now because we think that you are going to be part of this rotation moving forward. In some capacity. It'll be hard to say what it's going to be because, again, you're bringing him in. You're going to have to navigate the KP situation. Don't know how that impacts situations at the 3 and the 4, where those minutes are going to get divvied up to. But it's promising to see, especially because even though he didn't shoot great in the Lakers game, it's not like it was like wounded ducks or something like that. It's just shots not falling, rookie getting comfortable, that kind of thing. But the energy was there. I mean, the hustle, the way he's going out for some of those rebounds, jumping into like the second row of the stands at one point, getting a loose ball, like just all of those things that you'd want. And that's what I mean. Like, it's just like you see a guy do that, and it's just in of all things, just summer, like just going out there and hustling like that. It's a sneak preview on what you're trying to get out of this kid when he actually gets to the NBA level. So there's a lot to be excited about with him. I mean, I guess if I had to make a pro comp now in terms of what I knew about him going in, which was slim to none, to what I've seen so far I'm out of him now, and it's one that I've seen kind of thrown around, is probably like Ingles. Like he's like baby,
he said that himself. That was the
he's baby Joe Ingles. It's an accurate comp.
He was like, that's the comp he gave for himself. So I can see a lot. I will say that coming in, I know myself included, kind of seeing Scheierman as Sam Hauser insurance. And while I can see that Scheierman does look like he's going to be a good off-ball catch and shoot guy, looks like a good movement shooter as well. I just think there's a little bit more to his game in terms of off the dribble that you don't get from Sam. And you're losing a bit of the defense that Sam provides in exchange for that. Like, I think Sam's a better defender. Scheierman gives you a little bit more off the dribble in terms of creation, self-creation, and creation for others. Both of them can rebound. I think Scheiman's probably got the edge rebounding as well. So in my opinion, there's a world where these two guys can be on the floor together and absolutely work okay, because they can bring different things on different sides of the floor, and then they can both space the floor on weak side, strong side, whatever you want to do. I really like Scheierman. He's probably the guy I'm highest on this Summer League roster. And he's the first draft pick for a couple of years now, where I've actually been quite excited to see him get integrated into the system, follow his development, and hopefully root for him throughout the season with a consistent role, however big or small that might be. I'm actually quite excited for Scheierman. Like his game a lot on both sides of the ball. I thought that, the Creighton ran a lot of up-tempo stuff with him. I like the fact that he can operate in transition as a transition pull-up shooter, transition creator, can get to the rim, can do all these fun things, right? So, yeah, I don't know about you, but me personally, I'm very excited for watching Scheierman's development.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I tend to lean to, too. I think in terms of the wings, he's definitely the most promising that I see right now.
Yeah, for a while.
And I mean, it just helps that he cut his teeth in college. Like, I think I think the past few years have changed my opinion personally on how I view college athletes. So much value gets put into, well, this guy's only 19 years old. He's got 1 year of college experience under his belt. He's got room to grow in his frame. He's got room, in his game to grow. But the flip side of that is that you have to give him that developmental time. That means
Yeah.
that he has to get the minutes in order to get to where he is. The Celtics are at a standpoint now where it's all about floor raisers, having a high floor on these draft picks and guys that can come in and immediately carve out a role, or at least have a higher chance of doing so because they come in with this kind of level of polish. And I think like Baylor Scheierman's a perfect example of that. 4 or 5 year college athlete coming in, does the little things that you need him to do, has a good shooting stroke, has good court vision, and just is clearly demonstrating that he's got the years of experience under his belt in order to kind of play the role that you need him to play. And it's
Remember
exciting.
that song? I got the magic in me.
Oh
That's
my
how.
God. Rivers
That's how. I like.
Cuomo.
Yeah, man. That's what I got. I think that's how I feel about when Scheinman's playing at the minute. I'm like, yo, dude's got the magic in him. Jokes aside, Anton Watson's another guy that I didn't really know what to expect. As I said, I haven't done my deep dive on him yet. I'm a little bit behind there. I really liked him. I thought that in terms of being a front court playmaking hub, which is similar to what Cornet's used like and similar to how Al Horford is used as well. And I know Watson's kind of used Horford as his own player comparison. He looked good. They ran a couple of different actions with him, that flex DHO, where you had a flex screen into a dribble handoff with Watson kind of hovering around that elbow DHO. Elbow DHOs are quite common in Europe. Ime Udoka utilized them a lot during his one season with Boston. Watson seemed to feel comfortable there, just taking those few steps in, handing the ball off that way. I thought he looked good in delay actions. Some of his passing, he had one where there was an entry pass to him around the nail. He tried to post up and get like spin off of connect, didn't work. Found a really nice kind of kick out pass for an assist. Put effort in on the boards, hit his shots where possible. He had one that I thought was a free, but it shows that he didn't hit a free during the game. But I've got a clip of him hitting one, so I don't know whether his foot was on the line and it got turned into a two. But like that
I think
range
it's a
is
long two, yeah.
that range is there. I need to look at the shot chart for it. I'm quite happy with it. I think that he's definitely a project guy. He's polished, high floor, low ceiling, another long time collegiate career. But he's coming in to a really deep rotation where there's Horford, Porzingis, Neemy, Keita, Tillman. Finding minutes for Watson just isn't on the cards right now. Maybe in a year's time, Cornet will go and bounce somewhere else, or maybe you move. Horford's career is obviously winding down a little bit. Maybe Watson is more of your long-term replacement there than what Tillman is. Who knows how that's all going to play out? But I think this is a long-term play by the Celtics. I think that there's a lot to like about what Watson brings to the floor. He's very versatile defensively, seeing comfortable switching, comfortable containing pick and roll ball handlers, lateral quickness look good. I'd feel very confident that he's going to develop it with a year in Maine, maybe bouncing between Boston and Maine. And maybe next summer we'll see a bit more dominance and we'll be talking about, hey, he should definitely get a spot in this rotation. But for me, yeah, it's a good pick, man. I mean, it was a late pick and it was a strong pick. So how can you be upset with that?
Yeah, and you're talking about late picks, and it feels like now, especially between the picks between Scheierman and Watson, it seems like they're definitely trying to find like a certain niche type of
Yeah.
forward, especially coming in like, again, another experienced college player, high floor, low ceiling, coming in, is able to pass, is able to defend, is able to rebound. And it seems like they're trying to find this kind of prototype with a lot of their bigs, similar to what they were trying to get with Xavier Tillman, and the kind of style that they'd sort of ask for out of guys like Al Horford, where you want the defensive versatility, you want guys who are able to guard multiple positions, as well as be part of the offense, using the bigs around the elbows, as creators, as passing hubs. It's big for the Celtics in order to kind of have the flexibility that they have. Part of the reason why the Celtics were able to have such a dominant run in the postseason was their flexibility, their lineup flexibility to play different styles of basketball, whether it's, pace and space or, bully ball. Having the option to kind of play that way and be able to plug guys in allowed them to be able to not only survive injuries, but to kind of match teams and figure out how the best way to beat them. trying to beat teams at their own game. And
Yeah.
so another wing to like kind of watch. And I think it's interesting because I think you've got two guys now after this draft between Scheierman and Watson, two guys who are physically more developed than what you've got with Walsh, and who offer slightly different skill sets in terms of like Walsh, I think obviously is supposed to be like a defensive stalwart, with some really, really, eye-popping athleticism, whereas these guys are a little bit more towards the polished side of things when it comes to playmaking, passing, and working around as like a ball handler or working around the elbow. So again, I'm in the same boat as you. I haven't done a full deep dive on Watson, but I'm excited to, and I kind of
I
hope
like
that
him.
I'm hoping he's a guy who gets more developmental time in Maine. He's not a guy that I see cracking the rotation, especially right now, with a fellow draftee in Scheierman, who I think is just gonna, because of the skill sets and the needs that the Celtics are going to have out of their bench guys, Scheierman's definitely going to leapfrog him in that regard.
I
But
really
it's still
think he's gonna be
exciting.
a steal. I think he's going to be the steal of the draft.
Very high. Plant that flag, man.
I've been on Romeo Island for so long. I've been building a dinghy to get off, and I've landed on Scheierman Island. So I'm planting that flag right now. I'm good with it. Scheierman's the steal of this draft. So that kind of wraps up everything in terms of takeaways from the Summer League game against Los Angeles. I do want to have a quick conversation, and I do mean quick. I want to keep these podcasts to 30 to 40 minutes. I don't really want to go much longer than that where possible. So we've got about 10 minutes to fill ish. So I just want to touch on the Jalen Brown stuff with Bronny and just get your thoughts on that, to kind of have a quick conversation on it. Look, Jalen Brown, for anyone that lives under a rock and hasn't been on social media today, Jalen Brown was, and I'm going to say this with air quotes if you're listening on audio, was caught talking about Bronny while sitting courtside with Angel Reese, and I can never pronounce her name, so I'm not going to try, but I do apologize. And basically, the lip reading goes as, I don't think Bronny's a pro. And then whoever is sitting next to it is Kiese. I can never pronounce it. Try and pronounce the name, Tim, just so I don't butcher it. If you butcher it, that's on you.
I am Googling a pronunciation right now, so I don't sound silly.
Okay, you do that. But
give me a moment.
She replies like, "Oh, I think he's going to end up on the G League team for sure." Again, this is all by the lip reading, also in air quotes. He's like, "Yeah, I hope so, but because of his name, I think he's going to end up on the Lakers." So Jalen Brown then kind of elaborated on social, saying it's an honor to be able to play alongside your son, and he wasn't trying to throw shade in any way. But from what we've seen from Bronny so far, I don't think what JB said was egregious. He just said Bronny isn't a pro. He didn't say won't be at the level of being a pro. He was just making an observation based on the California Classic and the first two games of Las Vegas Summer League. Have you got this pronunciation?
Yes. So it's Kaiser Gondrzek.
There we go. Kaiser Gondrzek. There we go. So my apologies, Kaiser. So when we look at Bronny's performances since being drafted, they haven't been exceptional. I know that, again, similar to Jordan Walsh, he's coming into the NBA with this reputation of being like a defensive disruptor. That's how Los Angeles are approaching his development overall. Is just like, we're going to develop him into being this high-level defensive disruptive piece, and then we're going to work on his offense on the side, and we'll see how that all clicks together once we're further down the line. I didn't think Brown said anything egregious. I feel like, and we spoke about this in an episode that we didn't end up posting, to be honest, but Brown just seems to be getting a really hard shake in the media right now. And it seems that anything he does is being spun in a way to negatively shine a light on him. I don't think what he said was wrong, like egregious. I don't think it was out of pocket. Maybe he should learn to cover his mouth like a lot of the other players do. When you're talking like this, can't see. Maybe he should, but he was having a private conversation, got caught on camera, and he wasn't insulting anybody. Like I say, he didn't say Bronny will never be a pro. He didn't say Bronny's trash. He's like, I don't think he's a pro. And how I took that was, I don't think he's a pro right now. He hasn't shown anything to change. To the contrary, right now, he's a two-way level guy. Cool. I don't think that's egregious. I actually think that Bronny could figure it out. I'm not against Bronny in any way. I actually think he could figure it out and become a rotational NBA guy down the line. But I don't know the slander that Brown got and like the hard shake he keeps getting in the media for everything. Like, I'm not about it.
Yeah, and I think the funny part about watching that clip and seeing him just talking, he actually looks like kind of sad about like, I really don't think he's an NBA player. And, you know, they're talking about him playing in the G League, and he's like, yeah, I think he'll be on the Lakers roster, but it's going to be because of his name.
Yeah, because of his name.
And that's not an unfair thing to say. And look, with Bronny, I think the hardest thing about trying to get a read on what his actual talent level is because obviously he's got the physical tools to be something. And I don't think that, I think it would be a lot different if it were a situation where, you know, he wasn't completely healthy college at level, right? Like he dealt with some serious heart issues. So I think if you weren't dealing with that, you'd have a better idea because you'd have a larger sample size at the college level. You'd know exactly what you were looking at, or at least have some kind of glimpse into what he could be as a player. I think the only reason why he even got drafted in the first place was because of that potential, and also because LeBron was kind of holding the Lakers hostage when it came to that situation. I don't think he gets drafted for certain if it weren't for the fact that he's LeBron James Jr. You know, do I think that it means he's going to be, you know, a bust or anything like that? No. I mean, I think that the kid needs some time. And I think that's totally fair to expect from a guy who quite literally had heart surgery. Like,
Yeah.
these are scary
People
stuff.
forget about this shit, right? Like people genuinely forget what Bronny went through last season. And everyone's like, well, he didn't show much in college. Well, the dude was recovering from some serious shit.
Yeah. And I'm not going to like hold that against him. And I definitely don't think it's, you know, kids are going to go through struggles. Like this, he's not going to be the only player who's going to go through struggles. The only reason that we're really talking about it as much as we are is because, again, it's LeBron James Jr. Like people are going to talk about it. And that's the same reason why, you know, the same comments that Jalen Brown was making are getting blown into something that they're not. And it's just, it's an honest observation from a guy who's at the NBA level. So, you know, I don't think it's anything was said out of line. And I think it's just a matter of
Unfair shake again for Jalen Brown.
Yeah.
Is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think that we've taken up enough of everybody's time. I think Celtics are 1-1 in Summer League right now. They play again tomorrow, Wednesday. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, they play today. If I remember correctly, it's the Charlotte Hornets. Cool. Bring on the Hornets. Bring on Miller. That seems to be one of the best players in Summer League right now. He's on a heater. Cool. Shut him down. Put Jordan Walsh on him. Let's see how Walsh does. You know what I mean? Or bring in Jaden Springer. Let's see how Springer does guarding up. Maybe we can find a role for him guarding up. No. Get creative. Do some wacky stuff. I'm down for all of it. We'll catch you again tomorrow we'll catch you again Thursday to recap what we see on Wednesday. Until then, everybody have a good one. Peace.
Cheers.